So, hello, and welcome back. It's going to be the second part of our live stream with Gnomo. I'm Aarnimetsa, and Gnomo, are you there?
Yeah.
So we are going to have some hands on a really special treat. Our member Kauris84 has won something like 9,700 or something from these 3x turbos. Now I'm having these hands probably in the wrong order. Yeah, those are going to be... No, they should be in the right order. Yeah, now they are in the right order, so I'm starting from the first one. So these are going to be games that, on the face of it, they look like that they are going to be $1 games and the prize pools are going to be huge. But the idea in these 3x turbos is that you have a, correct me if I'm wrong, you have a 90-minute of rebuy period. So at the end of rebuy period, you are going to be, like your rebuy can barely clear the big blind, and the add-on is like 20 starting stacks.
Yeah.
So with such a big add-on, it makes only sense to play the game if you are always going to the add-on. And it means that these games, I think Deia, my fiance that has played for Supernova, she played these games. She played these games and I think her record is somewhere between 40 to 50 rebuys. So if you are running really badly, it might be that you are
Spending a lot.
spending a lot. So like for a general rebuy, you'll need to budget like it's 5 times you're buying pretty much. But for a 3x rebuy, if you are
Smaller.
late regging at the end, it's something like 10x you're buying. And if you're starting at the first hands, it might be 25 times your big blind. And we can see in the late stages, like this is from the final table, the stacks are going to be really big. Like I think the first or the one rebuy is like 1,500 chips. So when we are seeing like the smallest stack on the final table right now, it's going to be 1.5 million chips. But it's still like, that's 1,000 starting stacks. And these games are really good for a player that can either late reg at the late point or play these games anyway, or has like, if someone has the potential to play $25 games, these are going to probably be the games with best ROI, because there are going to be so many players that are going to give up before the add-on period. So even a player with average skill that's always going to the add-on period will have an ROI of something like 30 to 40% in the long run, which is quite awesome. So the first hand we are going to look through, Ace-10 suited, we are UTG. What shall we do?
Min raise.
Yeah, I think min raising is going to be solid in here with something like Ace-9 suited, Ace-Jack off, King-Queen off, King-Jack suited, Queen-Jack suited, and then with pocket pairs. Actually, pretty many pocket pairs would be best by min raised. Min raise here, but I think Ace-10 suited is going to be too good to fold. And we are going to have a lot of hands here, so we are going through these hands a bit quicker this time around. There's a min raise. We are with ace queen off. We are on the small blind. What shall we do?
Raise, I think. Like
What's the sizing to raise here?
3.5x, I think, or 4 maybe. I think 4 is too much.
I think that this is going to be something between 3 and I think 3x would be my sizing here because it would be enough to discourage this guy to, and it would also be a good sizing. It would discourage this guy to be involved with a lot because we are having ace queen off. That's a hand that it plays really well against one range, but it doesn't play that well in multi-way pots. So, and this is
3 is enough to take the big blind.
what?
Uh,
Sorry, I didn't. Could you say it again?
3 is enough to take the big blind out of the hand.
I think 3 or 3.5. It's like something to factor in here is that we are going to be out of position against all of these guys. If we would be at button, I think 2.5x would be good, but and Kaudis asked that this is a late version of 3x turbos. At my game, chips was something like 700 million chips. Perhaps Gnomo can answer that. So was this the tournament that started at around 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. or midnight
No,
in Portuguese time
11.
in the evening?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the late version. And we were quite lucky that this guy didn't take part in the hand. So we are going to be against the UTG. Limper. And what shall we do here when we are hitting jackpot?
I think we should be betting small to induce to something. I think check is. I don't know. I would be betting small to try to hide my queen.
I think that in this case, I think it would be better to just check behind. It's going to be good because there are so few hands that can pay for a bet here. So I'm thinking that check is going to be pretty good here that you have done. And if we are betting here, we are going to bet small, like we are going to bet for $2 million, 2 million chips here. Our opponent bets. What do we do?
We just call.
Yeah, we are going to want to hide our queen. You said it pretty well. And now it's going to be not just bling bling, but ka-ching. We hit the ace as well. What do we do on the turn?
Check again. Since we
Yeah,
check in the.
I think that when our opponent is betting themselves, we want to give them the rope to make problems for themselves. He bets for 3 million. What do we do?
Uh, I think he's trying to make some blocking bets. So I'm uh, I'm scared of raising and take him out. So I think I should have just called.
I think in this case we can do for if we are having like if we are thinking that we are against a pretty bad player that this is like the first of four or we have had like four hands of the final table thus far with him and he has played one hand before this by limping and now he limps the UTG. So we could also do something creative like click back it to 6 million, but calling would be also be good. I think the worst option would be to fold, but I think the second worst option would be to shove here. This is the creative clickback. I like this a lot. I like this a lot because then we are going to get such a great pot for the river to shove ourselves.
So just calling is not the best option. So he can try to make another bet in the river.
I would like to have the, or if I would be in the position, I would like to call more. But when our opponent is betting twice in a row, I would like to grow the pot a bit more on the turn already, because he clearly has a hand that he likes. So the problem with check calling is that if our opponent is doing a blocker bet there, it's going to still make really our river play pretty hard when we are not in position. Like in position, that would be so much simpler, because if our opponent would have bet twice towards us, then it would be such an easy just press call, because on the river, even if he tries to get a cheap showdown by checking, we could still bet. And Caleon says that obviously check shoving river, but then it requires that our opponent will bet the river as well when he's in position. This is the problem of getting good value out of great hands, and position helps there a lot. And Caleon said that main problem is that he might check some ace-x in river, but if he has air, he will most likely fold to a raise. I think that in this case, that even if he has air, it's going to be pretty doubtful against a guy that has limped twice in a row, or twice inside 5 hands. I'm thinking that it would be doubtful for that kind of a player carry on betting the river as well. So, but I'm thinking that calling will be really close. So either on the turn I'm doing as you did against a player that's going to be weak, that would be to click back it, or then to call it. And I'm thinking that those options are close in equity. And there's going to be a bigger distance from click back or call to, there will be a bigger distance to a shove, and there will be a humongous distance. Like the distance is going to be up there to go to the moon or something like that, to fold a full house. In here we are against the opponent, and for some reason it didn't update the hands. So in this case, we are having an opponent that has limped a lot thus far, but has also folded his big blinds to a steal a lot of the time. What shall we do when we are about 15 big blinds deep?
Oh, min raise and
I
fold
think
for a 3-bet shove.
I think min raising, or if he starts to call our min raises, then we can start limping these kind of hands and then stabbing the flops. And but I think there are going to be multiple opportunities where we are having an opportunity to try to abuse a likely weaker player. Pretty much this is a different opportunity. We are having only 10 big blinds left. What shall we do?
I think it's a fold.
I think this is going to be a shove. Now I must say that I don't completely understand Kauris, that is it an open and then fold, so it's like raise fold, or if it's like open fold, that we are just looking at our hand and we are folding it straight away. And in here we can use the 180 man's price pool structure, because it's going to be really close to every price pool structure in the MTTs in PokerStars.
Okay.
With 8-7 suited, it's going to be a hand that's going to be profitable even if opponent calls perfectly. And I'm thinking that this guy is likely going to be tighter against the... So this is going to be a hand that it's going to be a... I think it's going to be a sizable mistake to fold. Ace-5 off. We are four-handed. What do you think about this hand?
A shove.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a shove here would be good as well. And this is something that I said for you the last time around, that which will only become better by practice. It's going to be that how to play in the final stages of an MTT when there is a lot more money in play, and it will come better with practice. But there will be a lot of... I think that like those kind of opportunities you would have shoved in a single table tournament, like every time.
Mm,
8 deuce off. What shall we do here?
fold.
This might actually be a fold. In general, if I'm having a weak player, this could also be a shove, but this is not a Nash shove, but it's against a weak player, it's still going to be a good shove. Good shove, decent amount of time. Jack 4 off. We are having about 8 big blinds. Or actually we are having about 8 big blinds, yeah. What shall we do here?
Fold.
I'm thinking that this might also be one of those hands that is going to be a shove in this, but like what kind of a range our opponent would need to call in the situation for it not to be a shove. And it's Jack 4 off, so we can look from his range, that we can plot his range against our equities for something like Jack 4 off. Let's add some other stuff there. For Caleon, it's more about the aggression. Like what I seen that Gnomo plays really good aggressive poker when STTs are concerned, but the late stages of MTTs are a lot tighter. But those are played a lot tighter, even though there is less ICM implications. But it's good point with the ICM situation. It would not be a good shove, but it's for the general aggression perspective, not for the hand in general. So in here we can see that the Jack 4 off, it's going to be this hand, so our opponent would need to call 35 or 34% or more for this to be a bad shove. And 34% would be about this kind of a range. And I'm thinking that our opponent is not like calling the weakest suited kings here. So I'm thinking that this situation should be a shove. And in these cases, in the final stages of the MTTs, it's really imperative to play aggressive poker, because almost all of your opponents, especially those opponents that are not playing MTTs as much, they will be so scared in playing. So this is like where if you have played a lot of 180 mens, this is where it pays off a lot in MTTs, because you have been in the final table so many times, so then you know that if you are aggressive in the final table, you are going to get so many... You are going to get so much more first, seconds, and thirds, so it's going to be imperative to stay aggressive through the final table. Queen 4 off. What shall we do here?
A fold again.
I'm saying that this should be a shove, and this should be a really clear shove, because we are not risking elimination here. We are going to add a lot of pressure to our opponent.
Yeah. Okay.
And Danita is going to have a good point here. When we are one of the two small stacks, we gain more by stealing from him, and a chance to eliminate him also. And the point in there is that if we are thinking about this as a competition, like poker is a fierce competition, and tournament poker is also, it's going to be a fierce competition. So in tournament poker, if we are thinking about this as a competition, it's going to be better for us when we are going to have a small stack to steal from the smallest stack, because he's going to be our worst competitor in the game, and the more difference we are going to have against him, the better our standing in the tournament will be, and the more probable it will be that it will be us that are going to win. And if we are like stealing from this guy, we are going to get like next time we are at the same exact spot. If the blinds have just gone through to us, in next time in the same exact spot, we can be in a spot that we can shove, and we can still have 2 or 3 big blinds remaining. Remaining even if he calls and even if he wins.
Okay.
And this is something that I think is going to be very important to go through. Like, go through the small blind hands. How much can you shove when you are having like 12 or smaller? Big blind or smaller hands. Even if he's calling perfectly, Queen 4 off is going to be a profitable shove. And I'm expecting an opponent to call something like 27% here. Probably even a bit less, as this is a big final table, so people are going to be even more stressed. So like Queen 4 off is going to be a really big... It's going to be a really big plus EV hand to shove in these spots. And Calleon says that it can be difficult to shove trashy looking hands, as when you get called you are almost always behind. But the point is that he will fold a big amount of time, and even when called there will always be suckouts. That's an excellent point. Like if we are always behind when our opponent calls with Queen 4 off, that pretty much means that our opponent is folding over 50% of his hands here. And if our opponent is folding about 50% of the hands here, 50% of the time, we are going to get the blinds without challenge. But that is not something that human mind remembers. Human mind usually remembers the times that we are called and we are completely screwed. And it feels bad. And that's something that makes also poker such a hard game to learn by playing rather than learn by analyzing the hands. Because if you are learning the game by playing, you will have a lot of situations that your feelings are going to lead you to completely a wrong strategy, because your feelings are going to be much stronger in a different case, and that's a really good point from Calleon. And I remember that this has been a hard final table for you, because you didn't have much good cards. But now we are having something to hit with. We are having pocket queens. What shall we do with the pocket queens here?
Min raise.
Yep. I'm thinking that min raise is going to be great, because the Satoshi guy started shoving a lot, started being aggressive a lot. And when he shoves a lot and starts being aggressive a lot, we want to give him spots when we are having absolute premium hands to
call.
go for it and induce him to Probably even jacks, I think that I'm going to min raise here and in use a shove. But this could be a good shove with a weaker hand. Something like pocket eights or pocket nines are going to be a lot better by shoves, or like any pocket pair that's going to be weaker than nines is going to be better as a shove than a min raise. Because with the min raise we pretty much can't call if this guy shoves the ICM situation. But I think that when we are shoving here ourselves, we are losing a lot of value with pocket queens.
Yeah, I agree.
There is an opponent almost shoving for 3 big blinds. We have the second biggest stack here with queen 9 suited. For the queen 9 suited, what shall we do here?
I think it's a fold because I can't just flat call. Then I would be forced to fold if big blind shows. And I am also taking the possibility of the big blind eliminating him.
Yep, that's going to be exactly the point. So I'm wondering, like, this was something that I wondered a lot, like, what's the point in here? Because, like, if this guy that has started being aggressive, if he shoves, it's actually going to be a great situation for him to shove, because if this guy calls and you fold, he's going to play for a huge pot with a great prize. Great price, and you shouldn't have that many good hands here. You can have something like aces and kings sometimes here. And I would recommend, like, this is, I would call this with queens or better if I'm thinking that opponents behind me are going to be bad. But with a weaker hand like this, I'm thinking that this is going to be a fold because we are going to gain a lot of equity if this Saskia Ninja is going to go at it with Satoshi too.
Mm.
And Danitas says that I wouldn't min raise pocket jacks against 3-bet happy chip lead when we are second in stacks. I would, because with pocket jacks we are going to have such a great equity against the wide 3-betting range. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be the edge. And it's going to be an ICM question. So we were dominated, and this guy lived. And this is something that I'm wondering, like, also, like, what's, in a way, what's the point there? And also in a way, because if we are thinking about this hand, that if they are going to get eliminated, like if this guy is going to get eliminated, actually it doesn't matter in this case. We are going to get the big blind anyway. And Caleon says that, do we expect cutoff to fold if we shove and big blind calls? I don't think that we can expect the cutoff to fold at any point. So I don't think that it's that good for the cutoff, or like for the cutoff when he's left with way less than ante. I don't think that he's going to have an opportunity to fold, even when we are going to call this hand. There's not going to be enough ICM implications to support that.
And
This might be an interesting hand.
that was the hand that I was talking about.
So, what's going to be your idea for this hand?
I folded and I think I should be calling it, but for ICM implications, I think it's a fold.
Let's see, because I think this is going to be an interesting hand. And that's also a good question for the chat. We are second in chips. The chip leader shoves the button. Shall we call ace-jack off? And by the way, there is like the Poker Eye Mania custom that every hand with a jack, it's impossible to play right. So you are going to get free pass even if it's better to call when you have folded this. Because all the hands with jacks are going to just be impossible to play correctly. So let's see. In this hand, if we are looking at the Nash ranges would be that the perfect big blind would shove any two cards here. And against a perfect big blind button shove range, ace-jack off would be a profitable call. But then there is the question, do we expect that our opponent will shove 100%? I don't think so. Our opponent had been more aggressive, but still his button steal stats are something like 50%-ish. So I don't believe that our opponent is shoving 100%.
I
I'm
think he's probably close to that.
I'm thinking that he's going to be close to something like 50 to 70%. I'm thinking that's going to be the like 50 to 70%. I think that's going to be the area where I'm thinking that my opponent or the opponent will be. And there are some good comments on the chat already. There is Danita says that it's fold. Ace queen off is probably pretty close. Kauris84 says call. Profilman says fold. So we can see that if we are having ace king suited here, that would be an easy call. Like it would require 22% and it will be a great call when opponent shoves less than 30%. Ace king off, it would be a great call after about 30% range. It would be a good call after about 27% range. Ace queen suited starts to be a good call at about 30%. Ace jack suited starts to be a good call at about 45%, and it's not terrible at 37%. Ace queen off starts to be profitable at 40 to 50%, and I'm expecting that opponent would shove 50 to 70% here. So ace queen off and ace jack suited would both be calls. But ace jack off, it's going to be profitable if our opponent is going to shove here with a wider range than about 77%. And our gain, if our opponent is shoving any two cards, our gain would be 0.20%. So, like, if we are wrong, okay, it won't be terrible even against 50 to 70% hand. I just think that in general, it would be. If you are thinking that your opponent is there with close to 100% hand, then it will be a good call. But I think against a general opponent, it wouldn't be a good call, but it wouldn't be a horrible call.
Okay.
And Calleon also has one good comment that Villain's range is almost always capped, so even the perfect Finnish internet connection in the Finnish cabins in the woods does have connection problems at times. And if we are having a capped range, let's see, we are having a capped range here. And capped range means that we are not going to have the best hands. Our opponent is not shoving his best hands. Actually, I'm doing such stupid things. If we are going with 70% capped range, then our best response would include ace jack off. And if we are going to 60% capped range, about 60% capped range, then our best response would be the ace jack off would be the borderline hand, and ace 10 suited plays better here. That's good to note. Pocket eights would be played better here. And if we are thinking about a 50% capped range, which would be the bottom end, and actually when Caleon said a good point about Villain almost always having a capped range here, the more that we are expecting to see a capped range, the more should we go with the ace jack off. And ace jack off will even be a call against a 50% capped range. So I'm doing a U-turn and I'm saying that it's going to be a profitable call. But it's not going to be a hugely profitable call by any means.
So you're okay with the fold?
What?
You're okay with the fold?
I'm okay with the fold. And I think that in this case it's one of the hardest spots to pull the trigger, because in these cases it's also that do we want to go all in for our full stack in a situation that's likely going to be quite thin, when there are going to be likely the table is still going to be quite soft when there is 4 people remaining. And ace 10 off is going to be a fold. Yep. And very good points to chat as well. So Jack 10 off. What shall we do here?
Mean raise and call the small.
I'm thinking actually that this is probably a hand that plays better as a shove here. We are going to have only 10 big blinds. If we are anti-adjusting for the situation, it's going to be about 8 big blinds stack depth. And we are going to have quite a solid hand to shove here. And for min raising, like min raise call the small and fold against the big blind, it's a good plan when people would act upon it, but if we are getting 2 calls here, and Kauris, could you say on what hand did you have the question on that? What if Kokoko is a 2 big blind stacked?
I think it's the ace jack.
Yeah, I think so too. And like if Kokoko is a 2 big blind stack, it's going to go towards folding, so then we are going to have more ICM effects, and also it's going to be easier for us to pass a thin spot, because there will be a really likely elimination in 2 hands. Like he's going to be the big blind next hand, and he's going to be pretty much forced all in through that hand, and then for the next hand he's going to be small blind, and if he hasn't gone all in for the previous hand, he's going to have less than a big blind remaining. So, and even the same for Saskia Ninja, it's going to be then a spot where we are going to have more ICM implications, and it's also going to be that if we are thinking it with common sense, we are then going to see that there will be an elimination, and it will be good for our equity pretty soon. So we checked them off, we min raised, and I think like this would be a great spot to shove this kind of a hand rather than min raise. We got 2 callers. Flop goes check check. We have about one pot remaining. What shall we do here?
check behind.
I think so too, that when there are two players and there's a big stack that you don't want to play against, then there is like not enough chips left when both of those opponents called. Turn is an ace. Small stack opponent shoves. We would require 21% pot odds. What shall we do here?
Mm, fold.
Yep, we are not having enough odds here. But this is basically one of those spots that when I'm building my ranges in a spot like this, I'm going to min raise the top part of my range, then I'm going to have a medium part of the range that are going to be hands that I don't want to raise fold because they are having so much equity, and also hands that I can't raise call against a big stack because they wouldn't be profitable. And then I would have a part of my hands that would be raise folds. That would be hands that I wouldn't fold a lot of equity if I'm going to raise fold against Satoshi. And this is going to be a spot that I'm going to, like pre-flop, I'm going to have a quite a small min raise fold range because I can't min raise fold against this Kokoko guy. So the min raise fold range against Satoshi is also going to get a lot smaller. And I think that this Jack 10 off is going to be a hand that doesn't gain a lot on flops, will be hard to play, and it's going to be a medium strength hand that we are going to get a bit sad when we are going to fold so much equity than it would have. So it's going to be like when I'm creating the range, the absolute premiums, min raise call, medium strength hands, shove, and
Shove.
raise fold. And raise fold is going to be really small in here because we'll need to call the Kokoko guy. And this is basically the same hand revisited. This is a bit better hand. Our stack size is about the same. And this is also going to be like what kind of a ranges do we assign. And I think this is going to be a hand that would be better as a shove as well. And even with a shove, it's going to be quite a thin shove. And that's actually one good question. What shall we do on the flop?
It's tough. If I bet, I have to call if he shoves, so.
Pretty much, if you are betting half the pot, he's already all in. So pretty much the bet sizing will be for your opponent to be all in.
I think it's betting is better than checking.
I think so too, that then it will be that we are betting as a bluff here. That we want to have our opponent fold, like, and especially when we are having a player that plays or has been playing passively a lot of hands and calling a lot of hands pre-flop. That as for the previous part when I explained that the opponents can be flopaholics, this is an excellent point of those that this is going to be a hand that I think that pretty much just when the small stack only calls, then shoving is better than if we would be thinking about like checking and what do we do if he shoves. It's going to be way weaker. As a shover or as a raiser ourselves, we are going to have an edge because then our opponent might fold some of the, and almost all of our opponent's hands will have equity. That when we are betting here, we are denying our opponent equity because our opponent, pretty much no matter what he has called here with, he will have 6 to 7 outs. Like even the weakest aces are going to have straight draws here, and all the other hands are pretty much having at least 2 overcards. And Kaleon, as has a really good comment again, so I'm going to read it. That also one problem for hero might be concept of effective stacks. Hero stack here is 11 big blinds, but only one opponent has that amount. So in reality, you are not risking as much compared if all opponents had more than you. That's a very good point. But we check, our opponent checks back. On the turn, it doesn't change anything. Nobody pretty much improved their hand. What shall we do on the turn here?
If I didn't bet in the flop, I think I have to bet now.
You have to bet here. Yeah, I agree, because then we can still... In our opponent equity and with the queen high, we are not going to win the pot in showdown that often, so... Thumbs up. We have 4 hands remaining, so we go through these 4 hands. We have about 8 big blinds, 6.6 anti-adjusted big blinds. We are having 7-6 suited. What shall we do here?
So
Yeah, this should be a shove. This is a really solid hand, and we really need the chips here. When we are the smallest stack out of the 3. King 5 off. What shall we do? And sorry in advance.
shove, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be a shove. And I remember to mute my microphone this time, so it's better. I'm starting to have a little flu, or I started my flu yesterday or tonight, so... And these 2 hands are going to be really important, because even though, like in this game, there are not that many situations, but in the long run, there will be so many situations where you are in the small blind in such a spot. And it's going to be, like, this is going to be a situation that will happen a lot in the games that you are playing. And that was actually the final hand of the 3x turbo, so it was interesting that I have marked the hand that you were asking about, and I think that now you have a better idea on what to do there.
Yeah.
And as I, like, when I'm trying to tie this all together, that I think that there is a lot of good in your game, that I'm generally liking the bet sizings. Usually your bet sizings are good, and you are really aggressive, and I like that, because most of the players in MTTs are going to be way too tight. But I think where you have problems is going to be short-handed play and the play around 5 to 15 big blinds deep. So like the mathematical play of pushing or folding, there will be situations that, and especially in late in the MTTs, I can see that you are a bit too careful in those situations. And it's interesting to see that you are more aggressive in sit and goes in general when they are getting short-handed than you are in MTTs when they are getting short-handed. So the MTTs are going to be like, I know that it's going to be more stressful when there's more money in stake. So that's something that requires practice, but that's going to be something that I think every MTT player has need to combat with by having experience for that. And there are good comments also on the Danita side that if I'm unsure in small blind versus big blind, I use a heads-up push-forward chart as base and adjust based on ICM and opponents. When you are using that chart, you will also need to adjust with all of the antes that are incoming. And what does he mean? That's hold'em resources, or there's like on hold'emresources.net there are the push-fold NAS equilibrium charts. So when Danita is unsure about
Yeah, I know
what
that skill.
what to push, that's going to be a good starting point. And there were some points that I didn't have time to discuss, like the something like also on concentrating on one game because there were a lot of different games in the hand histories that you sent to me. And there is like bankroll management. I tried to have something like what's the correct rebuy strategy and how to calculate the rebuys to your bankroll, because usually the rebuys are quite enticing that hey, this is going to be a tournament that there's going to be a lot to win from and the buy-in is going to be really small. But then when you are starting to calculate at how many rebuys you'll in general make, it's not going to be that good of a deal, and rebuy tournaments also are going to last a lot longer. ROI-wise, the rebuy tournaments are great though. And now I'll ask you that, do you have any questions?
I think you cleared my mind for now to practice.
But you'll have now something to practice, like the late position shoves, especially from small blind, button cutoff, to go through those hands with Icy Miser and improve on those, because those are going to be situations that you are going to get a lot of the time, and improving those situations will improve your game as a whole a lot.
Okay.
But I think this has been a good session, and I'm saying much appreciations to our chat. There were some great comments from Kauris, Kaleon, Danita. So thanks to you guys, and good luck for our Vegas boys PS 2011, Marcus Y and Jones. Hope you win a WSOP event. And as Kaleon says that when there is a lot of studying for Gnomo, that hand evaluation area helps on that. So that's also something that you can do. That post your hands on the hand analysis area, because there you can get also a lot more comments on how to calculate. I think there are quite some guys like Danita and Blank One that have become quite some wizards with Hold'em Resources calculator in quite a small amount of time. And there's also at least one active player that responds that is also using Icy Miser. So, but I'd say thanks to you all. Next Sunday, I'm not sure yet that do we have, or next week, I'm not sure that do we have any sessions, because Kubery will be in North Carolina, I think. So he's in the United States, and we will have visitors here. So might be that next week we are not having a live stream. But for my part, I have probably said thank you for everybody. Is there something that you would want to say, Gnomo?
Just thank you for the code.
So, if you are going to sleep, guys, have a good night. If you are still playing poker, may this be a winning Sunday for you. Bye!